Okay, good day. This is Sir Yuan. Welcome to Prose and Elements World Literature. You are watching this video lesson because we are either in an emergency situation or we are in an online situation. So let us proceed with the topic, Prose and Elements. Now, before we discuss fiction and nonfiction, I would highly suggest you take a look at our previous lesson via Quipper if you have downloaded that particular PDF file so that you may be able to um, put into perspective and into context the lesson for today. For today, we'll be talking about prose and its elements. Okay, let's start with fiction and nonfiction. Now, very briefly and very quickly, here are the traits with fiction. It is a made-up story. Um, It is a fantastical story created by fiction, figments of our imagination or of an individual's imagination. Nonfiction has facts that can be checked and proven and is usually devoid of any creative endeavors such as imagination and altogether um, the creation of a very fictional type of story or concept. Now, fiction can tell about things that could happen. So it can prophesize, however, it may or may not be true. It is read for fun. Also, characters may be like real people or imaginary altogether. Now, with nonfiction, the author is an expert on this information, on a particular topic, on a particular concept. Now, nonfiction, on the other hand, its characters may be real. Also, it can or it may not have characters altogether. This is because we are talking about a particular concept or a particular idea, not necessarily a story about a particular person or an experience or a situation. Now, moving on to fiction. Fiction is story from the imagination of the author. Stories are pretended. Sometimes animals or objects can talk. They could wear clothes, have jobs, like, for example, Beauty and the Beast. Um, we have appliances, normal appliances that can talk, have um, characteristical clothes to depict their profession. What else? We have fables of which animals can talk and are able to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong. Also, in fiction, people in the stories can do things real people, cannot do. And story might have funny pictures or funny imaginations given if the novel or the story doesn't have any particular um, story of the topic or of the character or of the environment. So, a few examples of fiction. We have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. We have The Boy Who Cried Wolf and The Necklace. I think most of you are familiar with The Necklace. Also, to add, um, we have Mayday Eve by Nick Joaquin. Nick Joaquin again is our Filipino answer to Edgar Allan Poe. We have Ang Alamat ng Pinya. Those kind of stories where the pineapple was able to talk or that there were fantastical creatures involved in the story or animals were able to talk, so on and so forth. Now, forms of fiction. In literature, we have three main forms of fiction. We have the novel, novella, and short story. Now, novels, long works of fiction, contains the basic elements of fiction, may contain also subplots along with the main plot. Novellas are shorter than a novel but longer than a short story. Um, Short stories, again, from the name itself, short stories. These are brief works of fiction, contains basic elements of fiction, one main plot, and is usually just one altogether in general. one conflict, and most can be read in one setting. Sometimes, some short stories you will need to understand or reread from time and time simply because they are difficult to understand. Now, we have here um, a list of examples for novels. So we have Lord of the Flies by Golding, Catch 22. We have here David Copperfield, The Great Gatsby, Ulysses. We have here Lolita, The Catcher in the Rye, and The Call of the Wolf. Other, let's say, novels, we have Harry Potter, um, Game of Thrones series, no? Kato mga Dance of Dragons, kana sila. We have Lord of the Rings, okay? For novellas, we have At the End of the Day, A Christmas Carol. I think everybody's familiar with A Christmas Carol. We have The Dream Story, The Pigeon, and The Pearl by Steinbeck. With Steinbeck's stories or novellas, they usually depict a particular experience of the American culture, and I think that or of the Western culture, and I think that it is worth the checkout simply because you'll be able to familiarize yourself with characteristics of other cultures. Then we have short stories. We have Ernest Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants. We have The Lottery, Lamb to the Slaughter. We have The Cat Person, Science and Symbol by Vladimir Nabokov. Now, with one key note with Vladimir Nabokov, they usually with Russian literature, there is that particular alienating element with their stories, either in their conflicts or rather plots or events. Given that with Russian life, it is sometimes different from, or sometimes very fantastic than most of our experiences. Now, for genres of fiction, we have mystery, we have horror, fantasy, science fiction, as well as myths, fairy tales, legends, historical fictions, to name a few. Now, you can read all of these one at a time. However, I'll give you a brief description of the genres of fiction. So we have for mystery, it involves a investigation of sorts where the author engages the readers to the investigation, making the readers hooked in that particular story. Horror aims to frighten or to disgust the audience. That is the main goal, nothing more, nothing less. Science fiction, it talks about futuristic stories, um, futuristic stories like time travel, space exploration, the mixing between fantasy and uh, concepts about astrophysics and physics. Like for example, with Star Wars, Star Trek, um, the Time Traveler's Wife, those types of stories. Myths are based on tradition or legend of a particular culture. This is why we label them as such. Like for example, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Philippine mythology, Mindanaoan mythology, so on and so forth. They convey certain truths that would explore individual behavior and a culture's experience. Fairy tale is a type of short story that typically features folkloric fantasy, like fantastical creatures or characters like dwarves, elves, witches. In our case, in the Philippines, we have the aswang, kapre, tikbalang, those types of um, magical, fantastical creatures. Legends are semi-true story, which has been passed on from person to person and has important symbols for the culture it has originated. Historical fiction is a literary material of which takes the setting located in the past or a glimpse into the author's life, you know, life or past life, those types of things, especially the immediate surrounding of the author at that particular time period. Now, elements of fiction, we have number one, the plot, setting, characters, point of view, theme. I would say that the plot is the most important, as if there's no plot, there is no story. If there's no conflict, there's no story. If there's no situation or happening, there is no story. The story revolves around the situation or the happening or the plot. Without it, it is irrelevant. There is no such thing as a story in that particular sense. Even if you think that a particular fictional material has a very implied plot, it still has a plot. Now, the plot is has five main parts. We have the expository, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the denouement, which is depicted by the pyramid. So the exposition is the start of the story, the beginning where peace is introduced, and then there is a rising action of distress or chaos, and then chaos erupts in the climax. Once it has erupted, the the action goes down, and a new piece is being um, introduced, which is in the denouement. Sometimes some authors would use certain elements like flashbacks or foreshadowing to uh, to introduce certain situations or elements. Like for example, with flashback, the author is introducing certain past experiences of the character or characters within the story, so that we may be able to understand the context of the story. With foreshadowing, it is a technique where, oh, sorry about that, it is a technique where it provides clues or hints, Also in the story, we have different types of characters. We have the major and the minor characters, the round and the flat characters, the dynamic, static, and the protagonist and the antagonist. For POV, we have first person point of view, which is always represented by the word I. So it is a personal POV of the character. Third person point of view, the story is told using a narrator. So this is very omniscient, very sometimes there's very limited omniscience to give a sense of mystery for the reader, and it also sometimes used to be very objective in that particular sense. Now, the theme is a central idea or the central message of the story. It usually contains some insight into the human condition, telling something about humans and human life itself. So, uh, themes like beauty or good versus evil, family, betrayal, love, loyalty, death, justice, um, what else? Development, so on and so forth. It's countless. It depends on the context of the story. As opposed to fiction, nonfiction is true and factual. Now, stories in nonfiction are about real people. Nonfiction give information, might include maps or real pictures of people. Pictures sometimes have captions to describe the photograph, and they have usually index at the very end of the book or the material, and a glossary which defines words defines the words that the author has used. Now, there are many forms of nonfiction, which includes newspaper, dictionaries, encyclopedias, scholastic news, n- school paper, textbooks, magazines, and nonfiction books. Nonfiction books like essays, business books, motivational books. Now, with nonfiction, there are two categories. So we have the literary nonfiction and functional text. With literary nonfiction, it has elements of fiction. Um, However, it still talks about true stories, true events. With functional text, it gives instructions, show directions, explain rules, provide information to help complete certain processes or procedures or graphics. Okay. Now, with literary nonfiction, this includes autobiographies, memoirs. When you say autobiography, it is a personal narrative of one's own life. With biographies, it is an account of one's life told by other people. We have letters, essays and articles, reviews and reports. Those will fall under literary nonfiction. Functional texts, as the name implies, so recipes, directions, schedules, menus, brochures, maps, and applications all fall under functional text. Now, what are features of nonfiction? Features of nonfiction contains the contents of the material, the glossary, the index, the heading, the bold prints, creating a sense of topic and content. We have photographs or real pictures of people. We have charts, graphs, maps, and sometimes captions, especially for photographs that depict real life situations or events. Now, given all those, right? Sure, we are fond of literature, may it be directly or indirect. Now, if you were to write your own prose fiction, supply the following. Now, for this one, for this activity, write this down uh, in short bond paper. Send it to me via the GC. I'll be giving you information, or rather instructions, via the GC where to send it so that it'll be easier for everybody to submit. But for now, draft this on a short bond paper. This will be sent or submitted electronically for ease of use for everybody, as we are all online or in an emergency situation. So, if you were to write your own prose fiction, supply the following: story title, characters, setting, plot, point of view, and theme. For this one, the minimum pages would be 2 pages, as you will be, plotting characters and the plot and other elements the of the prose fiction that you're going to write. So make sure to be very specific of what you would like to write and how you'd like to write it about, you know. Uh, and there's that. Now, if you have questions or clarifications, do let me know when we see each other face to face or via the GC. Until next time, thank you all for taking the time and watching this video lesson. I hope this helps and see you around. Stay safe.